Welcome to Levels of Connection, where we discuss how human connections work and why they're so important. Welcome to another episode of Levels of Connection. Today I'm speaking with Shola Kaye, and it was a really inspiring conversation. We explored her career as a author and keynote speaker around communication and empathy, also her career as a singer, and the contrast and the common things between the two functions and careers that she's had. Really interesting around how people sharing their emotions at the workplace and how that bonds them together and really makes them stronger as both as human beings, as professionals, as team players. Really interesting conversation. Enjoy.
Good. Thank you.
Shola Kaye, welcome to Levels of Connection.
Hi, Stefanos. Brilliant to be here with you.
Thanks for participating. And to introduce you, Shola Kaye is a author and keynote speaker around communication and empathy. Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. And let's hit it off with, what connecting means to you.
Yes. What does it mean? So, connecting is obviously there are different levels of connection, as you know, but for me personally, it's sharing something that is meaningful, some kind of emotion or something that is important to me that has then been shared with another individual, and hopefully it's resonated with them as well. And so when that happens for me, I feel, yeah, we connected in some way, shape, or form.
And I love also the connection that you have both with the stage as a speaker, but also as an artist, as a singer. Talk to me a little bit more about that. How, first of all, is there a difference when you're speaking versus singing?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I worked for about 10 or 15 years as a professional singer, and that was before I went into being a professional speaker. And I love both. And I actually wrote my first book, which is called How to Be a Diva at Public Speaking, because people see speaking typically, if you have to speak at a meeting or something, people see it as a real chore in the workplace. Like, I've got to do this presentation, I don't want to do it. Ugh. Whereas whenever I said to somebody, oh, I work as a professional singer, like, oh, that's amazing. Wow, you're so lucky. And to me, as somebody who had the chance to do both, there are so many similarities, so many. And the reason I wrote the book, Diva is a framework. So D stands for dynamic, I stands for being inspiring, V stands for adding value, and A stands for being authentic. And I feel like obviously all those things you would need to provide as a singer, but also as a speaker. And so when I wrote the book, I really wanted to draw the parallels so people could see, well, it may seem like a real effort to have to do this work presentation, but it's actually a massive opportunity to showcase your authenticity, your creativity, to give people some added value in the meantime, to inspire. I mean, it's just, if we could get our heads around the opportunity that comes from, and also it's so efficient to speak one to many rather than having these like one by one conversations. So that was something that kind of really fired me up and inspired me to write the book. And then sort of going to this idea of connecting with people. As a singer, and I was singing, I had written some of my own material, but I also, just to pay the bills, no one necessarily wants to hear my original songs, unfortunately. So to pay the bills, I was working as a Motown and a jazz singer. And everyone's, people know Motown, they know a lot of the jazz standards. So on the one hand, it's a bonus because maybe when I'm singing, they're not thinking of my version of Natural Woman, they're thinking of Aretha Franklin, right? So I'm piggybacking off the work that she's done. But equally, I still have to bring something to the event, to the venue, to those individuals there. Yeah. And so that really got me in touch with interpreting the song, giving people something to feel that, maybe I remember I was doing one gig, and I think it was at a social club or somewhere. And there was a group of people, they'd been watching, I think, the European Cup finals or something before I
Okay.
came and sang. And so I think it was Liverpool or whoever it was, they just lost. So everyone's there like, oh, damn, miserable.
Was it a tough crowd for you after that?
Well, this is the thing. So I'm like, oh, well, I can't just go in and say, hey, dancing in the streets. You can't, you've got to give people an opportunity to transition. So I actually said to them, well, look, how are you feeling? It's such a shame that the team lost, isn't it? And yeah, so I said, you know what, we'll start slow. We'll just do a few slow ones and then we'll just warm you up. So I changed the set. We started slow. And then by the time, the night ended, everyone was like, dancing the night away, etc. But I see this, I used to be a speaker trainer, and I would see sometimes people, they were obviously nervous, maybe they hadn't done a lot of speaking, and they had some material, and it's like, right, this is it, whatever happens, do or die, this is the material, I cannot change, I cannot diverge from this. But, going to this idea of connection, you've got to have some flexibility, because the audience you're speaking to may not be in the same place. And if you are wanting to connect, you've got to meet people where they are. You can't expect to just drag them, to wherever you want to go without making some effort. So, as a speaker, I think, because I came into speaking after singing, it definitely helped me, having had these experiences of, first of all, the kind of raw emotion side of singing and music, which maybe one doesn't see so much in terms of speaking. But I think you get a lot of speakers who they've rehearsed their talk, this is it, and they come on, and you can kind of see that they're not really present, because their eyes are rolling in the back of their head like, oh, this is the bit where I step here, or I'll tell that story, right? And to my mind, that's not a genuine connection. Maybe it's very smooth, maybe it's well rehearsed, but there's an element of presence as well, so that you're creating something magical with those people in the moment that has never been created before. So sorry, long answer, I know, Stefan.
No. How do you get to that presence, that authentic presence on stage, either speaking or singing, that you manage to connect in a genuine way with the audience?
Yeah, I think it's, as I say, sort of reading the audience, understanding where they are. It might be, as a speaker, doing your research on who's in the audience, what do they need. I'm not particularly a religious person, but every single time I speak, I would always say, please let me give these people the thing that they need today. Because it's so easy to, it works both ways. You can either be, oh my gosh, I'm going to speak to these people, what's going to happen? They're looking at me. Or it could be, hey, I'm going to speak to these people, they're going to be looking at me. Right, however you want to interpret it. But ultimately, it's just such a privilege to even connect one-to-one, but it's a privilege to have people listen to what we've got to say. And therefore, there's an element of wanting to understand where they are, meet them where they are, be present in the moment. Like an example, I was speaking to a group, I think it was at the Royal College of Architects or somewhere in London, and I was standing right at the back of the stage, and then I didn't realise there was a gap between the stage and the wall. So I went to step back and literally just fell down the gap.
Wow. Was everything okay?
It was fine, but it was that moment where you could see the audience looking like, how's she going to react? What's she going to do? And I could have either looked really embarrassed and like, oh, this has ruined my speech, or just, oh my gosh, that was funny. Anyway, let's carry on. And when I said that was funny, let's keep going, they all laughed and we just moved on. So it's just this element of anything can happen, and we're often afraid of that. But let's use it as a way to create and generate something special in this moment of real presence and, as I say, creativity.
And I love what you said about, admitting what's going on and using it in a positive way and just relaxing into it. Because many times in business, everybody's so uptight in these roles and these, you know, boundaries. You have to do this, you have to be like this, you have to act like that. Whereas if we remember a little bit that we're human, you know, and, you know, with all the good and bad, things do become easier. And, you know, the fun element that a lot of times in business we forget, you know, it's important to remember that as well, to keep it fun. And you can still have fun and, you know, reach your goals and work effectively in teams, etc.
Mm,
Um,
so
I
true.
love what you said in your TEDx speech about sharing our human emotions bonds us together. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So the TEDx speech that I did was on workplace empathy and why we need more empathy at work. And obviously, the range of different roles, backgrounds that we find in the workplace, it's an opportunity, but also it can be a risk, right? I mean, if we take, for example, politics or the way everything is so polarized today, we can either kind of go into our shells and be afraid of communicating because of what can come out of that.
Mm,
But I feel as though if we can kind of get beyond the detail of what we're discussing and instead connect with the emotion, we as human beings all experience the same emotions, at some time or another. So by connecting on that level, we are then able to recognize each other's humanity and go beyond, well, you voted for this or you support this or etc etc. um and yeah, I don't know if you've come across the book. It's called Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. um and in it he talks about people who are, sometimes you meet people and they're just so comfortable, they can talk to anyone about anything, and everyone walks away saying, wow, that was a great conversation, what just happened? And so what he was saying is those individuals who are super communicators, what they tend to do is they ask questions that enable others to get in touch with their emotions on different topics. So it
mm,
might, instead of saying, where do you live? They might ask, what was the most fun city that you've ever lived in? Um, or where did you go to college? What was your favorite subject when you were studying? And so
mm.
instantly people are getting in touch with, okay, well, this is how I feel about this, or maybe they never even were asked that question before, and so now they're, and so people walk away having kind of got in touch with something about themselves, but also they were able to communicate that to another person, which then creates that connection.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the work that you do with organizations about sharing their emotions, do you find a lot of resistance in different people or different aspects of that?
Yes, sometimes it's I mean, fortunately, I think with COVID, it wasn't, a great time for many, but it really encouraged people to share a bit more about what they were feeling, what they were going through. Companies had to be a little bit more accepting of the sharing of emotion at work. And I think once that happened, it's not something we can forget or completely reverse. So even though we have people like Elon Musk, going back to bossism and that the boss the boss rules, let's just go back to how we were. I think a lot of organizations are realizing the opportunity and also the desire of their workers
Mm,
for a more humane environment in the workplace. And so there isn't as much uh, pushback on discussing emotions. I think also when we look at the younger generations, like Gen Z or Gen Z,
mm,
depending where you're from, they want to talk about emotions. They want to talk about sort of whether it's mental health issues or whatever. And yeah, I don't think that's going to change. It's just going to become more prevalent.
very good. Um, Talk to me a little bit when, how were you as a child connecting with others?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. As a kid, I remember when I was about 5, 6, I was very, very chatty, very, always very outgoing. I also quite enjoyed time alone, reading books and things. But as a kid, I was fostered. I was fostered from the age of, I don't know, about 3 months until I was 11, and lived with white English foster parents until then. And then at 11, I went back and lived with my birth parents, who are Nigerian. And I think that for me, because obviously as a child, what is your immediate family and the security of that. And so there were times where as a child I felt quite sort of insecure because of the changes culturally and also in, how I was being raised.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that had an impact on my confidence, I guess, as a connector, and how I think some people will be the same. They connect at the same level, whoever they're with, and then other people are much more like, well, is it safe to share this with this person? How will they respond to me if I say this or that, the other? And I think that part of one of the impacts of the childhood that I had and the changes I went through was that it did change the way that I connected with people, and I was perhaps more wary or more wanting to create a kind of more of a bubble of comfort around myself, because of big changes that I'd really had. I didn't really want to be as exposed, later on. So I would call myself more of an introverted type, although when I'm on stage singing, etc., I have to be outgoing. It's my responsibility. But yeah, so I think there can sometimes be a bit more of a wariness than I would like when it comes to feeling accepted and feeling that I belong in groups.
What advice would you give your younger self around this or around connecting?
I think a lot of it's important to be in touch with your values, and to not need everyone to like you. And I think for a long time, I wouldn't say I was a people pleaser, but I would have some anxiety if I felt that a connection didn't go the way I had hoped, or if somebody didn't appear to instantly like me when I'd been trying. There was like, oh no, that person, look at the way they twisted their face when you said that thing. So I'd probably say to, just lighten up a bit. Not everyone's going to like you. There's a world, this is a world of variety, and that's okay. You choose to be you, and then let everyone else manage the way they manage.
And if we connect that with professional singing and also professional, a professional speaker, you need to have that confidence when you're up on stage about what you're representing and what you are communicating. Because some people may not like you in the audience. Some people may disagree. Some people may be of different opinions. How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's very true. And it's I tend to survey my audiences at the end, and I'm fortunate that I tend to get pretty good results. There's always one or two. And as humans, we have that negativity bias. So instead of saying, yeah, look at that, 94% approval, like, what? They didn't like that. So it's great because it is a bit of a leveler and it keeps you humble, but then it also reminds you that not everyone will like you. And you could either make yourself so kind of anodyne and so bland that it's completely inoffensive, but at the same time, your scores will probably go down anyway because there won't be the highs and lows. There'll just be this kind of bland, middling thing going on. So I think it's important to obviously choose the content that serves that audience, but being yourself is the spice, right? Being that's what we bring. And I always say to people when I do speaker training, well, look, they could hire Alexa or Siri, just put the words in. Siri, yeah, today we will talk about everything, right? And it could be amazing. But who's going to want to listen to that for an hour? So it's okay to be you and just deal with what comes along.
How do you help the people that you train to get in touch with their emotions and then convey that to the audience?
Mm. Well, one thing I say to people, and this kind of goes back a little bit to your the question you just asked, was I say to them, what are your communication values? When you appear, even if it's on stage in a meeting, even if it's just talking to a colleague, how do you want to come across? Because
Mm,
people often feel very unempowered or disempowered when it comes to, especially speaking to groups. And they think, well, whatever comes out is what it is. There's nothing I can do about this. But even saying, right, well, to me, it's important to be relatable, or it's important to come across as authoritative. Once you have that in mind, and ideally something that's not so far removed from who you are that it's ridiculous, right? But once you have that in mind, you start to feel you've got some power here, not only in the what you say, but in the how you say it and how you come
mm,
across. And you see people, they're like, oh, you mean I can choose? This is, it's like a real, world changing thing for them. And it just, I think something like that, just at the beginning, is like a paradigm shift. And then people realize that, okay, I can choose. That means I can start to choose the vocabulary I use. That means I can start to choose how I present the information. That means I can start to choose how people interact with the information. And then it becomes a creative thing rather than a must do. So
mm.
that's kind of how I get them thinking about the power that they have there.
Yeah, I love that you connect it with the power and the impact, the potential impact that they can have on others.
Mm.
Um, and I understand that that really shifts their way of thinking it, of more a, not something as a chore, but something that they can really deliver something of value.
Yeah. And deliver some of themselves as well, I think. Because
Mm.
especially in the corporate setting, I mean, you do keynotes as well, don't you, Stefano? So
Yes. Yeah.
um, I'm sure that, you enjoy thinking about a topic from your angle and what can you bring. But I think when people are presenting, maybe it's like the team data or like the sales, whatever it is, um, you're thinking, well, I don't entirely own this, or this isn't all mine. So how much can I bring? But I think there's always an opportunity to bring some of yourself, um, wherever the information's from, if it's company data, if it's something you collected yourself, whatever that is.
And the more authentic people are when they're presenting pretty much anything, the bigger the bond and the connection is with the people that are receiving that information. Um, and I love what you said about, sharing human emotions in the workplace. And that also, there's ample opportunity to do that when people are presenting to one another. Um, yeah, I love the way that this sort of is making sort of a complete circle. Talking about connecting, do you have a method of creating more connections? Because we're all in the business world, or family or friends. How do you make new connections?
Mm, that's a really good question. It's and I'll be 100% honest, because as somebody who is more of as I said, sort of introverted type, or let's just say that I get energy from being on my own or in smaller groups. So sometimes it's incredibly overwhelming, right? You go on social media, blah, the posts are just like
Yeah.
blaring in front of you, or you see, oh, this one posted and they got this many likes. I should have that. What's wrong with me? Oh, right. And then either you feel like, oh, I shouldn't go on again because it's too depressing, or I should go on more, but then it means I have no time for myself. So I'm still trying to, get a balance here. I mean, I think connecting one to many, not on stage, might be around maybe a newsletter or something where I'm a little bit more in control of the environment. I do post on social media. I'm still, I think, being of a generation that remembers not having social, I'm still like just trying to figure out the balance. And I probably, if I'm honest, if I could walk away from social, I probably would. But it's not possible these days, I think. But it's that balance of being visible enough that people know that I'm still around, but having enough energy and time to myself or with people that are important to me that I don't feel like I'm kind of being just drained in all directions. So I'm fortunate because I think sometimes when you're on stage, we were talking about this before we began, but you can make an impact on people that you're not even aware of, right? So I think there's a beautiful thing there in that you can influence people without knowing. And then by, converting that to a newsletter, sometimes people reach out, or they reach out when they fill out feedback surveys. And then, just people that I will resonate with. I think that's the important thing, really. It's so easy to have lots of connections with people that maybe there's nothing real there, but you feel like, well, maybe one day they'll connect with this one. But I think for me, there's got to be some resonance in terms of whether it's similar outlook or similar energy, or there's just something, says something that really appealed. So that's what I'm looking for in this world of, being hyper connected with so many people.
And for one-to-one, face-to-face connections, new connections, how do you go about doing that, especially for people that have a hard time approaching others?
Yeah. It's something that I did a series on LinkedIn earlier this year, and it was again for sort of people who are introverts or quieter people. And I asked my audience, well, what are the things that you find challenging? And many people talked about, networking. Like, I find networking so draining, but I know that I have to do it for me to succeed in my career. How can I be successful here? So, I certainly wouldn't say that I've cracked it myself, but I think it's about being intentional, and it's about balancing your energy so that you can, when you come to those sort of events, you can have meaningful conversations without feeling too drained. I think it's about setting expectation as well, and saying, if I walk away having had 2-3 really good conversations in this, even in a whole day, you know what, I'm ahead, rather than going home exhausted and, you've got loads of business cards or scanned loads of LinkedIn, profiles, but you're like, oh, where do I begin? I won't even follow up. Right? So I think that's a really important thing. There was something else I was going to say, but it may have popped out of my head. But I just think quality over quantity. And I think also what can happen, and this is something that has been on my mind recently because of conferences I've been at, but you might connect with somebody and you start having a conversation and you're enjoying the conversation, and then someone else comes along, oh, can I join you? And you're like, oh, and then you have to start again, like, oh, for Pete's sake. And it's not bad for them to come along, right? But you just think, do I have to, the heavy lifting that I've already made, right? Now I have to start again. So I think that can be, because I'm thinking, well, why do I find these things so draining? And I think that can be off-putting when you just don't want to have 50 gazillion, like, oh yeah, what's the way from it? Yeah, you too. And so it's hard. I mean, maybe it's the solution is that you quickly identify who you might like to continue a conversation with, and you say, right, there's 3 people from today I'm going to follow up with, and the rest you leave. Or you take the person that you're enjoying talking to and just like, right, you come here, go in the corner. I don't think that will work though.
And you mentioned having 2 or 3 meaningful conversations. What does a meaningful conversation, consist? How do you define it for you? What are you looking for in a meaningful conversation?
Mm. Yeah, what is meaningful? It's a conversation where, and it depends obviously what you're there for, right? So a meaningful conversation could be, wow, this is a potential lead, or it could be, oh,
Mm,
my nephew's looking for a new job and this person could connect, so it could be that, or it
mhm,
could be, at a personal level, somebody who you shared something either, creative, original, or meaningful. So they walked away with something about me that was that was important. I shared something with them that was important or unique, or it might be about recognition, right? Could be
mm,
I recognized something in them that I learned from, or made me think. I mean, for example, and this isn't a new connection, but this is I was connecting with somebody that I'd been receiving, like a service from, and so we got talking. And early on in our sort of professional relationship, I'd been a bit wary of this person and kind of, well, can they deliver, etc. And then they did deliver, they over delivered. And so I was then thinking, well, why did I think they wouldn't deliver? And so then it had me thinking back to, and this is just based like assumptions we make, right? Just based on the way this person looked,
mm.
people in my past who had looked a certain way and had not delivered, um, I just thought, oh yeah, this person's like them. They were, and it just showed like we're just, stimulus response. It
Yeah.
just poke, right.
Did you share it with this person?
I have recently shared with
Okay.
them just
Yeah.
yesterday. I think I shared
Mm.
by email, so I haven't waiting to hear back. Like I said, I had these assumptions about you, and I
Yeah.
realise this is
Mm,
so. Thank you for that, because that in and of itself is powerful.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I like the way that you're defining what meaningful means to you, and for the people that are going to be listening and viewing to this episode, they can also consider what they want to accomplish from a connection, from a conference that they go. What does a meaningful conversation with another person mean to them, and what they want to get out of it? And if, like you said, if you're intentional enough and focused enough in order to be able to get what you need from this communication, from this connection.
Yeah.
Um, Shola, for somebody that would be listening or viewing this episode, what advice would you give them around connecting to do immediately after they watch the episode?
Yeah, okay, I like that. Good question. I think it goes back to what you were saying, which is I think about what is important to you in terms of connecting, because we're all different. Some people are super connectors, right? And it's about volume and just knowing what this one needs or that one needs and bringing people together. That may not be your thing. So it's really about what will advance you in terms of your work, perhaps if we're in a work setting, what will advance you as a human being in terms
Mm,
of understanding how you work, or perhaps what you can give to other people, or just what will give you an better insight into who you are and what you're about. So there's that level of connection, as well as just they can help me or whatever. And then also from a perspective of what can you give to somebody, because that can be a different way to frame an interaction in terms of, okay, there's this person here, um, not to make too many assumptions, but does this person seem like they would appreciate me recognizing something that they've said, or the way they come across, or even saying to them, what kind of connections do you need, or who are you here to meet? I
mm,
mean, I think just coming from that position of, we have got something to offer, because
mm.
especially when you're sort of networking in the business world, um, we're not always thinking about what do we have to give. We're thinking about not so much what we can get, but just, okay, this is business. Ugh.
Yeah.
So just thinking of as human beings, what can I give? Could be a word of encouragement. It could be a connection, because I think it just takes the focus off ourselves and onto them, and that's always a good thing.
Thank you for sharing that. Shola, the time flew by. It was a really interesting and lovely conversation. Thank you for that. And what did you? I had so many insights today. What was useful for you from our chat today?
Well, it's interesting, and I'll just, in full disclosure, I was saying to Stefanos beforehand that I don't particularly enjoy doing podcasts because I think
I
me.
really appreciated you sharing that. Yeah.
Well, it's just me again, the same story. What do I have to? What value? Because everything's there. Someone can go on ChatGPT, couldn't they? Say, well, tell me about blah blah blah, and then they get the answer. So what do I have to give that ChatGPT doesn't? So it was. I really enjoyed the fact that we talked about the connection between the music and the speaking, and I like that these questions that you've asked they allow somebody uh, to provide some insight, but also to have to think a little bit about what does this really mean to me? Because I think that's what's so important today. With you hear about it, the rise of technology, blah blah blah. But let's just tap into our human selves as much as we can. So this enabled me to do that. So I thank you, Stefanos.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for investing the time today. And as always, you've been to Cyprus before, so this is another opportunity. I'm inviting you to come back to Cyprus, and we'll have another conversation. In Cyprus, at the beach or in the mountains. You can choose wherever you want.
Wonderful. The beach sounds good to me, Stefanos.
Shola, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching another episode of Levels of Connection, and thank you for your continuous support. Go ahead and share your comments below of what you found useful from today's episode. See you soon.